Hi guys, it's Amy here. Just joining you today to talk to you about postpartum depression and anxiety. So I just wanted to kind of give you a bit of an overview, a bit of some information on what it's about. I'm sure a lot of you have a bit of an idea of what that looks like in your own lives. But I just like to kind of explain to you what's just an overview of kind of what it can look like, just so you have a better understanding for yourself. So I know with my background, I've talked a little bit about this in my own experiences. And so I just want to share with you all the different areas on a continuum, just so it kind of makes a bit more sense for you. If you have anything to add, feel free to put something in the comments. If you're joining me live, feel free to say hi, make a comment as we go through this. If you're watching the replay again, feel free to comment anywhere throughout, ask any questions, let me know what's going on, and share your experiences if you'd like to share kind of what you've been through. Like I said, I've shared a bit about my experience and my story about where I've struggled at different points. And I know it can affect us all on a different level, and we will never really understand kind of what other people are going through. It can affect us all on a different level and different areas of our lives. So there's a continuum, kind of what they look at things as, and it starts at the postpartum blues. So generally, most women, up to 80% of women, experience the postpartum blues. So that can be tearfulness, crying. It generally happens 2 weeks postpartum. I know I remember going through that very vividly with both of my daughters. It caught me very much off guard the first time I had my first daughter, going through the postpartum blues and just crying and crying and crying. So that's very common, and it happens, like I said, to up to 80% of women, generally speaking. You go through the postpartum blues and struggle with that. And generally that will go away beyond two weeks. It usually gets a bit better, and that's basically due to the hormones that are changing from being after our delivery and our labor of having our baby. Our body's going through a lot of changes, so that's a normal thing that commonly happens with new moms. And then there's a period called a difficult postpartum adjustment or stress period, and that can extend up to 3 to 4 months. So there's no real numbers or statistics on how many people that affects, but that's an extension of the blues. So that's when things happen a little bit further on, and that's a period when it's important to reach out for help and get some help. I know it's very important to get help as soon as possible, as soon as you know something's not going right. So during that difficult postpartum adjustment stress period, that in that 3 to 4 months postpartum, like I said, it's an extension of the blues. So you're feeling sadness, you're crying lots, doubts, you're getting a bit overwhelmed with what's going on, and that is different from postpartum depression or anxiety. It's not as severe, but yet difficulties are experienced during that time. And like I say, it's kind of an extension of the blues. You're not doing so well during that postpartum adjustment period. And if you find that you're kind of in that period, you're not quite sure, you're not sure if you should be seeing a doctor, not sure what's going on, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and see kind of where you are and what supports I can offer you. And if I can direct you in the right direction, I can always support you alongside your doctor if you're already seeing them. So that's kind of the next stage. And now then we get into postpartum depression and anxiety, and that is statistically about 10 to 28% of women end up in a state of postpartum depression and anxiety. And that's when you're feeling really inadequate, despair, extreme anxiety, intense mood changes. So this is a bit farther along where it's really hard to manage. You're unable to cope with what's going on. And it's different from the tearfulness of the baby blues and the transition. It's more of a depressed mood that's kind of sticking around all the time. And can be nervousness, agitation, difficulty sleeping, getting to sleep, worrying, panic attacks. And again, like I said, about 10 to 20. Hi Priscilla, thanks for joining me and saying hi. I always enjoy you guys joining me live, and definitely make a comment if you guys have anything to add. And anybody else who's joined me, feel free to say hi. So we're just talking, I just going through the continuum of the baby blues, and then the difficult postpartum adjustment and stress periods. So those kind of happen to a lot of people. And then when we get into more postpartum depression and anxiety, it's a smaller percentage of people that are affected by that more extreme level. And you may already have been to your doctor. You may know that you're going through this. You may be at a point where you're feeling like you still need to get help, still need to go see your doctor, or you're not unsure about what you need to do next. At any point, feel free to reach out to me. Just send me a message. I'd love to hop on a call with you and see where you are and what I can do in supporting you through your process of chatting with your doctor, or just even if you just want to work with me and chatting with different things, I can work specifically with what helps with you. So that stage is when it's a bit more difficult. And like I said earlier as well, with the adjustment period, it's very important to reach out and get help when you're noticing anything's not quite right. Because the longer we allow this to continue happening, it's going to be harder to get help along the way, and it's going to be a longer period of till you feel better. So that's kind of where most people fall. There is another category, postpartum psychosis, which happens to a very, very small percent of people, and that generally happens within the first couple weeks of postpartum period. And generally speaking, you'll be hospitalized, and the doctors and nurses and that will be helping you with that. But it's a very, very small percentage of people who that affects, where you completely lose touch with reality. But that's a very small percentage of people. So, and like I say, that generally happens right away. It can happen a little bit further along the line. And then there's also postpartum anxiety that happens, where you're experiencing more of the anxiety symptoms, panic attacks, and those things. And you can be diagnosed with either postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, those types of things. So that's kind of the continuum of where everything sits, and the percentages of people that fit into those. And now there's all kinds of different feelings that come along with all of these feelings, and I'm sure you've experienced some of them. Sadness, loneliness, guilt, thinking you're a terrible person, I should be happy, feeling guilty feelings, helplessness, hopelessness, nothing I do seems to help, inadequacy, anyone else could do it better. Things like anger. Anger is a big, big one that comes up. I know I've talked about anger before, and I will definitely be talking about it a lot. It's a big one, and it catches us as women off guard a lot of the time, because the way society looks at us as women, generally, we shouldn't be angry. We should be happy, and we should be keeping it all together, right? So we get those feelings of pressure that it's not normal that we should be angry, but it is okay. Anger is a totally normal emotion, and it's telling us that something needs to change. And there are ways to express your anger in healthy ways. And I'd love to talk to you more about that if that's one of your concerns. We end up putting high expectations on ourselves, and that's a big thing, letting go of those expectations, and trying to just go with the flow. I know that was a big one for me, is learning to just go with the process and allow things to be the way they are, just allowing things to happen the way they need to. And then another huge symptom that can happen when you're suffering with postpartum depression or anxiety is no interest in sex at all. And that can really affect our relationships with our partners, affect our family as a whole, and that's a big piece of the puzzle. It can be really, really difficult, and then it can lead again and as a big vicious cycle back into guilt and feeling inadequate and all those things. So there's lots of things that can happen. We can be crying for no apparent reason. We can be isolating ourselves. Overly concerned for the baby, checking to see if they're still breathing, inability to leave them alone, worrying about what could happen to the baby. It's a very common things that can happen. Sleeplessness, sleeping lots, sleeping less. These can all happen. Overeating, not eating enough. Or eating too many of just the accessible processed foods that are just reachable. Those can be problems. Difficulties making decisions. I know that was a big one for me, just having a hard time deciding what I needed to do or what I could be doing. So those are things. There's so many thoughts can be running through our head. Feelings of thinking about harming your child, thinking you're a terrible person, thinking you're crazy, that you want to run away, you don't want to do this anymore. Those are all very common thoughts that can be coming up. And again, this is all okay to be experiencing all of this. Just make sure that you're reaching out for help, whether you want to reach out and talk to me, find another support system, somebody to talk to. It's very important to reach out for help through all of this. Now, this question's been asked a little bit in the group, what causes postpartum depression and anxiety, and why does it happen? There's many factors that can cause that. Of course, all of the hormones that happen, and that's why right in the beginning period when we have the postpartum blues, that's directly following our pregnancy, and so there's a lot of hormonal things happening right then, and biochemical imbalances that can continue to linger on a bit further, making things really difficult for us. There are other external factors that can be contributing and making it more difficult for each of us as individuals. So marital difficulties, if you're having struggles with your partner, that can cause troubles. Also losses. I know some of us have talked a little bit about this in the group as well. Loss of identity of who kind of we were, or grief of going through that process of being pregnant and enjoying that whole process and having to get through that, loss of freedom. So Priscilla's asking us, is there a way to differentiate between regular depression, anxiety, postpartum, or is it possible for the two to overlap? Yes, it's possible definitely for the two to overlap, and depending on what your doctor's saying, all doctors may have different thoughts on that, but yeah, it is definitely possible for them to overlap. We're all individuals, we're all bio-individuals, and our whole chemistry in our system is slightly different, so it's very possible. And I know I always talk about postpartum depression and anxiety because they do very much overlap. It's very common to have depression and anxiety kind of overlapping each other throughout that time of your life, and they both very much overlap. some people feel like they're having more just plain anxiety, and some people more just depression, but it definitely overlaps. I know with myself personally, I experienced a bit of both, and it's just trying to find that balance between the two, because they're both kind of on one end of the spectrum. So, you know, one day you may not feel like getting out of bed at all. You may just not want to do anything, not want to leave the house, hide, isolate. The next day you may just feel like you're just so agitated and you're having panic attacks and everything's just falling apart. And that's completely normal. It's completely normal to be on one end, the other end, or a bit of combined. That's totally, we're all different. So that is completely okay. So other things that can cause postpartum depression and anxiety, like I said, the external things, so other life stresses, your finances, if your finances are troubling you and stressing you out, other health concerns, if you have other things going on with your health. I know a big thing with me with my first daughter was my mom and her health concerns, and she was struggling a lot, and I was taking care of her as well. So when I look back, I can see all of the different overlapping things that contributed, right? So there's multiple factors that can contribute to this time in our lives. Inadequate support systems, I know that was a big thing for me too, is developing a support system and finding people who were there. I remember breaking down in a counselor's office once when she had asked me who my support system was, and I had no clue. I couldn't even say one person at that point in time. Just the state of my mind where I was, I just could not even think of a single person. I felt very much alone, and that can again contribute. All these are just different layers that can add to it, and everybody's gonna look a little bit different. We've got an airplane coming over here, guys. So it's pretty loud. we live in a small town, so there's quite a bit of little bush planes coming through these days. Now that it's summertime, everybody's getting moving around out here. But anyways, so sleep deprivation. So when you're lacking sleep, that is a huge contributing factor. Hi, Courtney. Thanks for joining me. So when we're lacking sleep, and I know that's a big thing, like, okay, so we expect, you know, to get sleep when we have little newborns that are waking up every couple hours. Like, it seems kind of a bit silly, but it is a big thing. So if you can find other ways to get sleep, that will help. And again, all these kind of overlap, you know, getting enough sleep, and through the end of your pregnancy too, if you're still pregnant, you know, trying to get lots of sleep, and keeping your body healthy, to help prevent this from progressing as you have baby. So unrealistic expectations about motherhood. I know that was a huge contributing thing to my postpartum depression and anxiety. I had all these ideas of what it was going to be like to be a mother, and I was one of those women who walked around thinking, seeing people with their children and thinking, oh, I'm going to do this way, I'm going to do it that way. And I had all these expectations of what it was going to be like and how my children were going to be. And it was a big shock in the face to find out what it was really like and what reality was about. So those are big things that can contribute to that, to having this postpartum depression and anxiety in your life. Then the other things are having a traumatic birth experience or a difficult birth experience. I know some of you have talked about that, and that definitely can contribute to it, especially if you were planning or expecting to have a different type of birth experience. That can be very difficult. Some of the other things are having a high needs baby, you know, a baby that is a bit more difficult to look after, having them crying all the time, colic babies, that can be a huge factor in contributing to your postpartum depression and anxiety. The demands involved with childcare, that's a huge thing. I know I went through that myself, and I hear a lot of you guys talking about that, stressing out about going back to work and figuring out childcare and feeling comfortable with it. I know here in Canada, we generally have a year maternity leave, which is wonderful. I'm very thankful for that. But right at a year is when a lot of the time our children are going through a separation anxiety phase. So it was very stressful for me trying to drop my daughter off every day and her crying and I was crying and it was just awful. But those can all contribute. Those are all factors that contribute to postpartum depression and anxiety. And if you can relate to any of those, definitely post in the comments. Let me know what your experiences were with that. And again, if you feel like you want to talk to somebody about all of this or any of the things you're specifically experiencing, and we're all going to experience different things, and we are all going to have different factors in our life that are going to contribute in different ways. So we're all unique, we're all by own individuals, and I'm here to work with you and meet you where you're at. It's going to look different for everybody. So those are different factors that can contribute. And then the other big issue that comes up too is how it affects our partners. Our partners can be affected hugely, and if you feel that's an issue as well, I do have some worksheets and some information specifically regarding supporting your partners and understanding kind of what's going on. And I'm willing to, as if it seems like it's something that would specifically help you and your family and your partner, to work with you kind of as a team as well, to work with both of you and see what we can do to come up with a plan to make this a bit easier, because I know it can be very troublesome. Older children, partners, family members that aren't really sure of what's going on. So we can definitely help them understand more of what you're going through, because that is a huge contribution to postpartum depression and anxiety, because obviously we're a family unit and we're all trying to work together as a family, so it's impacting everybody. And your partner can become depressed and they can have their own postpartum depression and anxiety, or their own troubles with that. So there's lots of points that I brought up. I kind of skimmed over a lot of things. Priscilla saying, my company gave us 4 weeks. Luckily, I got about 8 weeks. I am lucky that I got that because I didn't qualify for FMLA. The state of maternity leave in the U.S. is depressing itself. Yeah, I know I hear about what's people's maternity leave in the U.S. and it does make me quite thankful that I am in Canada, where we do have that option to have that longer period, because I know it's so beneficial for baby to have that longer maternity leave, and it is unfortunate that the U.S. isn't doing more about that, and something definitely that people have to plan for, and that adds more stress to the picture, I can see. So yeah, I'm sorry that's the case down there. That's really hard. But yeah, so in Canada we're very fortunate, and we if you are listening from Canada, definitely be thankful for what we do have up here and appreciate it, because it's not always the case all over the world, and some countries I'm sure they don't even have a leave. They may not have those rights to have that opportunity. So thank you for joining me, guys. That's if you have any questions, let me know before I head out here. If you have any questions watching the replay, definitely post them. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions and talk to you more about this. And again, reach out if you have anything specifically you're going through, any concerns. I'd be more than happy to hop on a call with you and see what we can do to help you get through this. It's not an easy time, and I know through my own experience, it was very challenging, and I wished I had a means to reach out and make things easier for myself. I know living in a very remote, isolated place, it can be very challenging, and I know a lot of you have talked about that as well, as that it's hard without having those supports, right? We don't always have these supports in our communities, so feel free to reach out and I can help you find different means of getting that support when you are feeling alone or isolated in a smaller community, or even in a bigger community if you're not wanting to get out of your home. It's not hard to just hop on a call and we'll work through this and help you get better. So thanks for joining me, guys, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.